Good evening, everyone. It's Tom Sydney Bushnell, aka Numbers, here from Psych.Club, from the Tom Numbers Show. News with Tom Numbers on top of your game, and I've got one in the hat. Well, he's on a boat. So, where are you, Juanito?
I'm actually off the coast of Argentina right now. So,
Okay.
we're just. I was in Puerto Madryn, and this is actually an inlet here. So in a few minutes, we're going to turn and move north towards Buenos Aires. And so the land that's out here on the edge is this area and this huge inlet that's here. That's quite large, actually. So anyway, it's a fun spot.
I was talking to Matt Geiger, and he was saying that you were down, and I think some others have said the last couple of days you've been down in Antarctica. Was that true?
Yep, that's true. Yeah.
How long does it take to get from where you are to, like, on the boat from Antarctica to Buenos Aires? How long is that journey for you?
It depends on how you're doing it. I have friends that were down actually skiing in Antarctica, and they took their boat down there and then took a helicopter, and they went to a particular spot where they can ski from a pretty high altitude. If I heard them correctly, that was 9,000 feet up, and which I think they might have been wrong on that, because I think that the helicopter that they have only really is safe up to about 6,000. So they said 9, but I think it was probably 6. But
how does it work with getting into Antarctica? Because for the normal civilian, it seems like it's a fairly restricted zone. But if people are skiing, and how does it work? Is it more accessible than we might think?
Oh, you can go down for wildlife stuff. There's stuff you can do. Just you can't go down there and do industry, do other stuff. There's all sorts of agreements that are questionable on how they've been put together and who's involved and like that. But it's supposedly international agreements. What you're told is going on and what's actually going on probably are quite a stretch different.
Never the twain shall meet. I remember.
Well, no, that's not true. That's not true. It's going to meet. We're meeting them right now. We're moving past the bullshit. So.
Well, that's good. That's refreshing to hear. That's refreshing to hear. A couple of years ago, you, me, and Matt Letizia and Rachel did a show, and towards the last third of the show, maybe last quarter of the show, Matt asked you about Antarctica, and you told us a little bit about a dome, etc., being there, and you said in future you better tell us more. And then I asked you a few times if you could divulge a bit more, but I'm wondering now, we're further into the game and you're down there. Can you tell us a bit more about Antarctica and maybe the stuff that people don't know? Are you able to do that?
Well, just so people have a zone that they're in, Antarctica is 1.5 times the size of the continental U.S. It's a vast area, and the majority of it is under an ice cap. There's a common misunderstanding. They talk about the ice wall and things like that, but it's all perspective. Most people, when they think of a wall, they think of a vertical wall. It's a flat Earth thing, and it's actually. There'll be a bunch of flat earthers that'll be all upset with what I say, but if it helps them to make them feel better, in 4 dimensions, not 3, it is a flat Earth. Okay, so if you want to look at it in those terms, okay, it's a flat Earth. You just have to look at the physics differently. But in reality, in 3 dimensions, it's a globe. With that said, there's these things that get pumped out into society, and it's an ice wall. Well, it's not a wall; it's a ceiling. And for example, in places where you have hot springs, where you have heated water coming up from down in the earth, becoming large lakes and river systems. Those are liquid water. Liquid water under the ice makes huge caverns naturally. And some of those caverns are vast, huge, tens and tens of miles long and wide. They don't have to be that big. A number of them are much smaller, just a couple miles. And they exist at different altitudes and all sorts of things. You know, I like to go to hot springs in various parts of the country. There's one up by Fairbanks, Alaska, about 50 miles out of town. And they have a hot springs there. It can be 20, 30 below. Doesn't matter to the hot springs. It's still gushing up water that, you know, was 110, 15 degrees. And you want to go out and go into the hot springs, that's fine. In fact, they run a tomato farm there year round, where the hot water coming up out of the ground, they don't have to use solar energy. It's dark 24 hours a day in the winter, but they have light. They have systems that the temperature differential between the water coming up and the air outside, and do a heat pump system, and also generate electricity. So it's not that, you know, unusual or bizarre. You just have to understand the technologies. And then when you consider what's going on, you know, by the way, back at World War II, near the end, there was a German general, and he became president of Germany for about a month, a little over a month. After the war, during the Nuremberg trials, he testified in the Nuremberg trials that, contrary to what a lot of people believed, and some of the publications that were out, that component of the Nazis had actually built a city in one of the rivers, an inlet area that came into a vast cavern that was adjacent to the sea, and that it was quite complex. It was quite advanced. And of course, you don't have storms. You don't have a cold day or a warm day. The temperature is pretty consistent. All you got to do is bring in your light. And that was in an area where the cap was relatively shallow, only about a half mile high. The average depth of the ice in Antarctica is about a mile and a half, but there's plenty of areas where the ice is a mile, 2 miles deep or more. Imagine being in a place on a lake where, because of the water temperature, it's an average of, say, 60 or 62 degrees, and year round. And you're under the ice, and when you look up, it's a huge cavernous bubble above you, and a shoreline, because you're you know, on a continent. It's not just ice. There's land underneath that ice cap, and a shoreline that might be a quarter mile, a half mile deep, and the ceiling a half mile to a mile above you, hollowed out. If somebody wants to come attack you, they got to get through a mile of ice. If you have defense systems, you know, they're not getting to you anytime soon. In that era, with the subs and like that, was something being built out there. You know, more importantly, in fact, most of the conversations when people talk about it, they only go back into the Nazi era. And it's not just what was going on at Antarctica. You had stuff going on in Chile and in Argentina. What you really had was, you had a group that goes all the way back prior to the formation of America in the late 16, early 1700s. And the discussions that were taking place by more advanced thinkers, you know, how do you gain control at the nation state level over a growing world? Remember, the explorers were coming back and talking about these places, these far reaches, the Spaniards, the French, the British, they're all sending ships out exploring the world, coming back with new tales of paths and routes to get to various places and what they found there, and the treasures, the people, to a area of the world that was going through the Industrial Revolution, or just approaching going into it, the Renaissance period. Descriptions to the various monarchies of these places, which had amazing structural development, social development, etc., and yet they didn't have the advanced gunpowder. They didn't have superior armaments. They appeared to be more tribal. They appeared to be maybe a couple of generations behind the industrialization or the Renaissance that was occurring across Europe. And so in the discussions, how would they capitalize, get a leg up on those places and get their wealth, manage them, acquire them? And those discussions were occurring within literally their family societies, their bloodlines, to acquire the land. And in that era, the land was everything. You had to have ownership of the land, the property, the region, the politics. So from a bloodline situation, from a royal situation, you had parallel with this Renaissance period and the coming Industrial Revolution. You had an elite that wanted to control the labor as labor began to be needed, not just for farming, but for more sophisticated projects, division of labor. And they created essentially industrial clubs looking at technology and finding the people. It was really a screening system for finding the people who were innovators, who had certain mental abilities to construct and design, to build out the machinery, warfare, and industry. And so they created their little clubs, and they promoted certain people. As we got into the 1700s and the political chaos of the period, one of the things that was important was looking at, just like Africa, all the mineralization that you could ever ask for, ability to grow, tremendous resources, and yet it was arguably 200 to 300 years behind Central Europe in its technological build out. They weren't even using the wheel, carrying food and supplies on their head. The train didn't have the road system that you had with the Aztecs or the Mayans or the Romans. And so imagine, as these groups and societies looked at it, that you had the opportunity to break away, to move ahead in your own lane, in ways that these other people hadn't yet thought through, hadn't come together to organize and to work and control. And then you also had, at the same time, this growing money system where so you didn't get robbed and banged over the head and your gold gets stolen from you. You would get receipts, and then you would work with somebody locally. You would give them some of your treasure. They would give you a receipt. You would travel to another place. show them your receipt, and another family member at a distant place would then give you gold at that location, and you didn't get bonked over the head and lose your fortune. You know, a Templar system, and they would get a small fee. You didn't make money doing industry, etc. You made money as a trader, TAR or TRADER, in the wealth and the currency. You took a small portion for allowing it to be transported safely, for you to go from one place to another, even providing protection for your people, troll crossing type of thing. And as that built out, and then the understanding was there, some of these people wanted the ability to go not just to America to create this new you know, experiment with the America Project, but all of the Americas. A lot of people don't know this, but in the 1800s, the second most prosperous country in all of the Americas wasn't Canada or Mexico, which actually either one of them could have been, but they weren't. The most prosperous country after the United States was Argentina. And it was becoming very advanced, very developed. Within that group that was doing their secret societies and their industry and doing development wonder works, they created essentially a parallel of Germany on another continent to develop things, and that was in Argentina. And our own intelligence operations in the United States were monitoring what was going on there, and we're seeing this industrial development there in Argentina that was tied directly to stuff going on in Europe. Very unusual, advanced stuff. And part of the reason they had knowledge of it is because you had a component of it up in the United States, a component of it in Britain. These weren't political, they were industrial, and they were families, not necessarily, you know, certainly with political ties, but not necessarily with power, because they weren't necessarily the bloodline families. It was a parallel operation to create that wealth apart from the royal families and apart from what was going on in Europe. Remember, you know, after the French Revolution, at the same time you were having the American Revolution, and they were lopping everybody's heads off. And the Kaisers were constantly going to one war or another. Many of the people that emigrated to America from Germany, and by the way, at the start of the First World War here in the United States, in Europe, the United States population, 54% of the American population claims its ancestry to Germany. And a common theme amongst those people that had come to the United States prior to the First World War was they came here to get away from the constant wars of the Kaisers. They were constantly picking a fight with somebody. They were just cannon fodder. They were being essentially traded as mercenary armies to fight all over the place. The Hessians, who did George Washington fight on the day after Christmas, after crossing the Delaware in the dead of winter? The Hessians, the German force that was sent here under contract on behalf of the Brits to fight George Washington's army. And so people came here, moved here, and a lot of those Hessians, by the way, stayed here because they didn't go back home. They changed sides. So with that in mind, you had a diaspora out of Germany. Many of them came to America and kept their private organizations, and many of them came here to South America and set up their own variation in the counter climate. You know, it's summer here when it's winter in Europe, and sought out places that they could turn into their variation alternate Europe at that time. Very amazing stuff. And so within all of that, the reality is you had a breakaway that was being constructed, but the breakaway wasn't of bloodlines as much as it was a industrial and monetary group and wealth. And that's what has formed up and then planted its emissaries in governments around the world from the 1800s forward and in this last century to, from a remote location, affect the politics across the world and try to put its players into place and form alliances to control where the world was going and to own the future, if you will, and to pick winners and losers, to orchestrate wars between different countries to gain the wealth from it, and to prepare for a period when the countries of the North, across Europe and the Americas and Asia, would bring each other down through war to such a low point that the breakaway would step into the vacuum, turn the world upside down, and reinvent the world, starting from the southern hemisphere instead of the northern. And that's the way that they view where they want to go and how they want to do it. And for those that may be doubting my sanity in saying it this way and trying to explain it, let me just add a couple little thoughts for you. When Hillary Clinton lost in 2016 to Donald Trump, where was the Secretary of State of the United States, John Kerry, on the day of the election?
Down there
in Antarctica. Where did the Republican, now John Kerry, Democrat, replaced Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, when she went to run for the presidency? Where did Newt Gingrich go, who was advising Trump on the Republican side? A very politically influential person going all the way back to the Reagan administration and through the Clinton era. Where did Newt Gingrich go? He went to Antarctica also for 3 weeks after John Kerry came back. And by the way, where did Obama go for his last foreign trip as he was leaving the White House coming into the 2016 election? He went to, took a whole entourage of airplanes, people, and everything else. His last foreign trip, his first foreign trip was Egypt, by the way. And then the Arab Spring followed that. They did the setup for that. His last foreign trip was to South America, ending in Bariloche at the southern tip of Argentina. And then he goes horseback riding with Michael, hanging out, Michelle. And all the billionaires all fly their own planes down. There was just everybody's aircraft are down there. They disappear for a couple of days, come back, private meetings with friends and, getting ready to leave the White House. Where were they? Were they going south? Was somebody coming north to them? They're right there at this, by the way, this German village, Bariloche, which is, Nazi hangout from the war, etc. And by the way, when the Putin interview happened the other day, what was Putin really trying to explain to Tucker? That Tucker wasn't quite grasping. He wasn't quite ready for what he was hearing. Putin was trying to explain some of the same history that I'm describing to you, but from a different angle. The relationship of Russia into Central Europe and that region, the Russian people being there. And by the way, Russia lost 25 million citizens in World War II. Who were they fighting? The Nazis. Okay. When they went in and grabbed a bunch of the scientists out of Germany and took them back to Russia, the scientists were very afraid whose side they were going to end up on. And so they were glad to make deals with America to end up in America for the component that came here. And many of the rest of them ended up going to Russia. And it was, everybody picking sides, getting to be on whose side they were on. Putin talks about how they're still fighting the Nazis, the Azov battalion out of Ukraine. What's the story there? This is a legacy going back beyond World War II and to times before that. They've been fighting that same mentality and group. And then beyond that, what in part is he trying to convey? He said that the United States is not being run by Biden. Biden is not operating as the commander-in-chief or as the president of the United States. He said it's other people, most of whom you don't even know the name of, that are running America. Wait a second. If the presidency is perceived as this most powerful office on the planet, politically, wielding the biggest military and the weight of the industrial machine that is America, the business of America is business. If the person that the American people elected is not the person running America, who is? Biden said it's not, Putin said it's not Biden. He's got pretty good intelligence network. He's got pretty good spy network available to him. And he's telling the world, but especially the American citizen, he was trying to bypass, look, MSNBC, New York Times, ABC, CBS, they're not going to, if Putin gets an interview with them, they're going to cook it. They're going to play gotcha. They're going to do a bunch of, he didn't do the interview with them because he knew he wouldn't get an interview that got the information out that he wanted to get out. It'd be tweaked and twisted and morphed. So he did it with somebody that has some pull. He didn't do it with the riffraff at the fringe of the internet. He didn't do it with somebody out of France or Africa. Didn't do it with, Al Jazeera or something like that. He did it with Tucker. Somebody that's in the right circles, that's heard by a certain contingent of the American people and has some pretty good reach. And by the way, a lot of people are talking about, even within the Trump circle, that Tucker's not a bad option for the vice presidency. Okay, doesn't mean that's going to happen, but he runs in the right circle. So Putin, there's an advantage to going to Tucker because he's reaching a component that's not cooked mentally, politically, just to one side. And he has enough reach. And you never know. Maybe he's got a future that gives him even more power from Tucker's side. An interview like this shows that he has a different kind of depth, a different type of reach to go interview a world leader. Now he's got to go interview Xi or somebody in that class to balance it out and show that he's, runs in that circle and can have an intelligent conversation. But what Putin was trying to convey is that you have a component of the fight that we're in, which is not the ones that the American people recognize as being in charge. Well, if Putin is saying that Biden's not running Washington, D.C., is not running America, is not really the president, who is? He says it's people you don't even know. Well, wait a minute. In a lot of this audience, we have had this thing that's gone around. No, this is the third term of Obama. Obama's running Biden remote control. He had the King of Jordan there in the White House a little bit back ago. And so he walks up to the podium, the King of Jordan standing behind him to the right. And he's, hi, everybody in the press and all that. Oh, and by the way, Barack is watching on that monitor right there. If you look right there, there's the camera. He's watching on that monitor right there. Barack's watching, hi, Barack. Who's running Biden? He was making sure the king knew that Barack's here in the meeting too, okay? He's watching right there. He's paying very close attention. Yeah, you don't worry. The message is going to get through to my boss. Think about it. But you don't think Putin knows that Obama's in there playing behind the scenes, of course, trying to run Biden by remote control? That's why you want a weak leader. If you have a weak leader, he can be controlled. A weak, vulnerable leader that has problems. Yeah, that's who you control if you're Obama. But wait a second. Putin's not telling you that Obama's in control. Obama's answering to other people above him. So who's running Obama? Now, Obama is a complete creation of CIA. Everything about him is from a CIA creation. His mom got in the family business. Her parents, Toots and Dad was undercover for the FBI at the Boeing facility. Mom worked for the CIA. Mom became the banker to the what out of the Philippines. They're the family Marcoses. And so when the Marcoses left the Philippines and went into exile and moved to Hawaii, who managed the 10 billion that they brought with them? The same person been managing it all along when we had our military bases there and we're doing everything else. That 10 billion was managed by the CIA handler that was Toots, the mother to Stanley Ann Dunham. And then, by the way, Stanley Ann, she didn't birth Obama. He was born at the Peace Arch Hospital up in Vancouver, BC. The mother wasn't even black. She's Indonesian. The father's a famous American. Now, that baby was just placed with her. And she'd been in the family business herself. She did the little layouts in the Sex and Masochism S&M that Frank Marshall Davis was trying to put together when she was 16. The pictures are out there. It's not a fraud. Frank Marshall Davis was being run by CIA. He got the money, same as Hugh Hefner did over at Playboy. Said the money came from friends and family. No, it didn't. It came from CIA. They needed a honeypot operation. Marilyn Monroe, first cover girl, layout girl, got her training over there at Hilltop Air Force Base down at the top of the canyon, and had a security clearance to get in there to learn how to be photogenic, to trim, and do everything just exactly the right way. And then used her for the honeypot. Frank Marshall Davis just wasn't as good. He was too far off the map. Didn't have the same business skills as Hefner did, and the right people around him. But it was the same group, same money. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And by the way, for those that might doubt that, when Playboy got into trouble, who came in and rented the jet? The Playboy money jet, so they could have a pipeline to move money into Playboy to get it back flush again. Was rented out to the Department of Defense. Bunch of Nazis flying around in the jet all over the place. That's what happened. Coming and going from South America in the money jet. Go back when Playboy was having bankruptcy problems and survived all that. So,
who was the famous father then? This Davis, what was that guy's name?
Say that again.
You said there was a famous American father. Who was that?
Oh, I'll pass on that for now. It's too, it gets people all wound up, but that's okay.
But we're talking about
down the road.
Obama's father. That's what you were talking about, yeah.
Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, And what did mom do? Stand the undone. She goes down to Indonesia, hottest spot in the world politically, where they had a war down there, and arguably killed 1 to 5 million people based on the mapping and tracking that went on between the Suharto and Sukarno regimes in Indonesia. And the group that Obama's mom was part of, the pseudo-religious group, Sabud, Sukarno said in 1967 that they were a CIA cover operation with their religious activities and being run by the CIA out of Virginia. Sabud has been there in the background all along through Obama's life. The gal that was the one that went into Hawaii and got the birth certificate out, she was the treasurer for Sabud up in Bellevue, Washington for a very long time. And Sabud only had a couple of religious centers around the world. Indonesia, Hawaii, north of LA, Chicago, and Virginia, okay, and Seattle, up in Bellevue. So how's that happen? It was the intelligence agency operation working. This company only had about 3,000 members in the whole thing at the peak, okay? And the gal that's the treasurer for them, which you always want to put your intelligence operative in where all the money's at because they can see where it's coming and going, who's more powerful involved than anybody else. Fuddy. Fuddy is the one that came in and got the birth certificate released in Hawaii, and then supposedly died in a plane crash off the coast of Molokai, actually, up in this rough waters. And turns out that it was like in 14 feet of water at the edge of a pool where the plane went in, and then at the edge of that pool, it's only 4 and 5 feet deep. Did huge work on that, the Fuddy hoax. And who's Stanley Ann Dunham, by the way? Who's Loretta Fuddy? Go compare the pictures, figure it out. You're looking at intelligence operatives that created the Obama story and got him into office and used him. But when Tucker went over to go see Putin, almost immediately after that deal was sealed where he was heading over there, do you know what happened? Again, Putin told you that Biden's not running Washington, D.C., he's not running America, he's not operating as president or commander-in-chief. Somebody else is. You don't even know the names. Well, no, we know the names. It's Obama that's running Biden. Oh, really? When it was obvious that Putin was going to break the glass, he was going to go right around the media firewall, ice wall, and talk to the American people in the world through Tucker, where'd Obama go? He climbs on a plane, goes down to New Zealand, catches a flight to Antarctica, goes down, does some in-person meetings, and comes back. Wait a second. Why? Because of communications. See, communications is the hardest thing. And if you can't have secure comms, you're in trouble. So now let me change directions for a minute because I don't have a lot of time today, but I wanted to talk with you on this critical day. And we've always had some beautiful conversations. And so I want people to think about this. We knew that in 2020, coming up on the vote, we were going to have a problem. In fact, the problem for the other side within this political realm worldwide, the Clinton Foundation, Hillary Clinton, this global operation with all this amazing amount of money, had done a setup so that when Trump came on the scene, he wasn't going to stand a chance. Hillary has all the money in the world. Nobody's going to be able to beat her because she's got everybody backing her up. So it looked obvious that Hillary was going to win. And Hillary had, remember, been running against Barack back in 2007-8. And she had a huge amount of cash. But there was a meeting in Maryland next to Washington, D.C., coming up on the Democrat primary. And at that meeting, a Bilderberg meeting, everybody's there, all the known players, okay? Several hundred people at this private Bilderberg meeting, and including Kissinger and Carter and all the usual suspects. The Barack team presented for a day, the Hillary team presented for a day, and on the third day there was a vote who's going to be the candidate in this cabal meeting. And the decision was that it was Barack, that he could win. Hillary had too much baggage. What did Hillary take as the default position? She took the State Department, okay? She'd already been senator since Clinton had left office, carpet begging in New York in a Rockefeller stronghold. And there's a whole bunch of story there around that everybody should kind of be aware of, but we don't have time today. So Hillary is going to take second position to the presidency. What's the most powerful office that they can offer her as she steps back on the presidential race and allows Obama to go forward?
We've lost you for a moment, Juan. Wonder what that island was at the beginning of the show. I'll ask him. Oh, he's gone. Let's see if we get him back in. Wonder if he's been kicked off on a call. Let's see if we get him back in. There he is. He's back. Back in, Juan?
Yeah, I think so. There we go.
There you go.
Let's see if we got it here.
Yeah, we can see you and hear you.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. So in this whole thing, you got to think about the fact that secure communications are really critical. Now, when this crowd, this globalista crowd, not just the Obama or not just the Clintons, but the Obamas also failed to get control of the election. And by the way, let me just give you one interesting little thing. My buddy Patrick Byrne, in the lead up to the 2016 election, well before the 2016 election, he had been tasked as a FBI asset to the Federal Bureau of Investigation here in America, where he had provided some assistance. He's a businessman. We find ourselves in unusual locations, try to help out our home team government. People from every country in the world do it for their governments to gather a little information, give a little insight. It's not being a spy as such, but it's kind of you know, you got something important that we might need to know. You're at the right place, you're with the right people. Could you just give us a little input, feedback? If you see something, say something type of thing. So he was there as an asset. He got approached and he's published about this. He's talked about it extensively. This is not stuff that's not there. In fact, you can go and look at his book. And he just has a new one, just came out, Danger Close. If you haven't read it, you better go get it. I haven't read it yet, but I've got it on the way. It'll be here in a few days when I get back to the States. I'll read on my next plane ride. But he's talked extensively about the fact that he was asked by the FBI they knew that Hillary Clinton was getting payoff money from different groups. So he was asked without any specific instructions to see if she would receive a bribe and to document it. Because you can't have somebody that's taking bribes in foreign locations become president of the United States. So they knew she was doing it, but they didn't have good enough evidence. And if he could help them out, then he could help America not to get a corrupt person into office. So being a good American, he's asked a few questions. He gets a letter to, you know, make sure that if anything goes wonky, he gets caught and he doesn't end up, you know, before Congress explaining himself or in jail for trying to bribe a public official. And then he goes about to do his business and is very successful. He actually gets Hillary Clinton to accept a $18 million bribe. And the way that she receives that money, they do the negotiation, is she leaves her hotel room on a certain floor of a building. This is the way it would be. It's not exactly how it happened with Byrne, but this is the way he likes to tell the story so that people understand it. So the entourage, security, and everything else on one floor knows that she just got into an elevator, maybe with a staff member, maybe by herself. On the way to the other floor, she stops at an intermediate floor location, meets with Pat. They do the agreement. She takes $18 million in payoff money directly, and they have a brief conversation. Yeah, I'll get this for you. It's agreed. Okay. And she gets back on the elevator, continues to ground. Anybody in between, you know, at either end, all they know is she got on the elevator and left. All the other people, nope, she came in on the elevator and we left in the cars. You didn't realize there was a several minute gap in there necessarily in the pause. And she did her little meeting, took the payoff money and went on. But shortly thereafter, the FBI people are all so excited. They're going to get this person. We've known she's been corrupt all this time. Now we got her. You're a great American. Thanks for your service, blah, blah, blah. Then suddenly they come back and they're very apologetic. Look, everything you did it. Pretend that this never happened. And just go on with your life. If you know what's good for you, you won't say a thing, you won't do a thing. You're just going to go on with life. And he's like, well, wait a minute, she took the money. Well, he came to understand that what had just happened was done for the Barack Obama administration. What they wanted was to be able to remote control Hillary. They wanted to be able to have the goods on her, not to prosecute her, but to make sure that she would be their puppet. And she would do whatever she was asked or told or required to do. Burns is supposed to just go fade into the woodwork and behave himself and stay alive. Literally, his life is threatened. Pretty scary thought when you're right in the middle of it. So somebody wanted to puppeteer the person who was acknowledged was going to be the next president of the United States, who had the political and intelligence operations and control to pull off the setup of Hillary Clinton to take a payoff, a bribe, and then be able to utilize that. That was the Barack Obama administration. That was the CIA connections and the people that were in power over there who were in a position to utilize that to control Hillary. What happened though? Hillary didn't win. Trump won. They didn't have their person in place. Trump didn't go along with the game, and they didn't have a way of managing him. So then, as they came up on the next election, they had to make sure they had somebody they could still manage, they could trust, that was in the line for power, and that had all the right relationships, which was Biden, who has all the corruption, and they have the ropes and strings to control and manage him. The Biden laptop, all sorts of other things. But this time they had to have a way that they could manage the election results that gave them a safety. Remember, Trump campaigned extra hard. He blew out the doors with his win. It was so big they hadn't anticipated it. They couldn't cook the books big enough to overcome the vote towards Trump with the way they had things engineered on the vote mechanisms. So when the second round came up for Trump, they had to have something bigger. They set up a early morning pause in the vote in 6 states. And during that pause, they had to do some calculations, some rapid computer work. What are the numbers? How do you feed it in? What do we got to have to win the election? And these are the 6 states we have to work with. And then when they came back from that pause, that had never happened before in the vote count, in the overnight stuff, then suddenly the results started going a different direction and came close, but tilted to Biden. It had to be believable. Now, we know that the machines were transparent. They went out a certain way, and that the vote information was out there loose, but it wasn't necessarily understood exactly where the information came from that went into the computers and did the mechanical switch and change to push the vote over the top in those locations. And you have to understand with the drop boxes, with mail-in voting and all sorts of things, ballot fraud, etc., that many places had been cooked, but you needed a handful as a safety to go that extra mile if needed, and they did. And so those half dozen places is where the vote counting stopped. When that information was out there, it had to be crunched in a militarized type of an operation to get the numbers right, to make sure all the calculations right. And that wasn't done on the fly. It had been prepared. It was in place. The rest of the data had to be in the machines from the early vote totals, etc., and knowing what the polls were like that. Then the information came back into America. It went out a particular pipeline, and I'll just tell you, it was within the intelligence community and a certain aspect of the business community through the phone wires. But when it came back a completely different route. If you were watching the one, you saw information go in one direction. You didn't see it coming back. You sit there and wait forever. It's not coming back. One of the great inventions of World War II was a Hollywood star who came up with an idea. She says, why don't you transmit on one line and receive on another? And actually patented that. And the early radio, they seem so simple now, but at the time it was actually a unique thought. Instead of having a direct conversation, just break it up. And somebody's got to find the frequency you're transmitting on, and then they have to find the frequency that you're receiving on. See, if I know that somebody has got a hidden radio transmitter and they're somewhere in a particular town with tracking stuff, I can find that transmitter because it's going to have a strong signal. But receiving the signal, it could come from anywhere. So I might isolate the transmitter with tracking devices, trucks in those days, looking for signal strength and triangulating on a spot and locating the person that's doing it. But maybe they only transmit a few words to let them know you're there, you're ready to listen. And then they don't transmit again. They transmit one time, it's a brief burst, and it's all done. They're all ears. Now, if you're listening, you got to know who's sending a signal back to you with information. What if they send 20 signals? What if they send 100? But these people know the exact signal that's going to be the the exact signal frequency that you're doing. They might listen to all of them even, but if they don't know which one's the relevant one, you're hiding in a hall of mirrors. And so that was this little sneaky thing. Now, what if people are sending information that could be interpreted as data that might actually even be the data that you could use for the vote, but it's not the data that you actually use? There are multiple different ways. One of them is the one that's actually the critical code that was actually used. If you try to use any of the rest of them, you get gibberish, or it's false. It doesn't match the data that's actually going into the machine somehow. And so you can't prove perfectly that this is exactly how they did it.
Who was that invented that one? Who was the Hollywood star that came up with that?
I believe it was Greta Garbo or something. It's not Greta, it's somebody else. I can't remember. It was famous. She was a real hot potato at the time. And I can't think of her name.
No.
This is World War II. Anyway, and there's people who can Google it and they know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not an unknown story at all. Fairly famous. But so the question has been, where exactly was the data to overturn the election outcome in 2020? Where was that? What communication system was that sent through? And remember, when Barack went down to our South America the other day, to Antarctica the other day, why do you have to do it face to face? You couldn't trust any of the communication systems. What was the reason? You needed an eyeball to eyeball. Look, in the past, they do it at the funerals. Look at what happened at the George Bush funeral. They're trying to pass notes and have their silly talk and everything else. And they're being watched. Classically, you'd always do it at a funeral. So we have a funeral, everybody shows up. You can have a few little private conversations there or at other places. It's right in plain sight, but you can pass a note and everybody knows, everybody exits stage left. Here's what we're doing. Here's what's going on. And their little game got caught. They want to pass notes. They got a note. Here, open the letter. Arlington closed. You want a little secret communication? Okay, you got a secret communication. Brock has to go do an eyeball to eyeball because they can't trust the systems. That's why you have skiffs. Well, now they can't trust the skiff. They had Trump's skiff bugged when Trump was coming into office. That's why Admiral Rogers had to go over and goes direct to Trump, head of NSA, and tell Trump, hey, you're being spied on. And look, here's your communications from inside the skiff from yesterday. You don't believe me? Now listen to the rest of the story. So it's hard to have a secure spot. In the 2020 election, where did the data come back in to the United States in a secure way and then go to the various locations that it had to with the exact information to cook the vote, where hopefully nobody else is looking over your shoulder? It's totally secure. You control it from a foreign location where you've got everything set up to go through and maneuver the vote. In this whole thing, you have to think of all the players. What was their one place they worked from? Going back, and remember, you have the intelligence agency, CIA, the media that's coming out yesterday and today, and it's going to continue to grow and shut DC down in many ways over the next days and weeks. The CIA was running an operation. We knew bits and pieces of it. Now we're getting more of it that's filling in the blanks, where the CIA had targeted Trump and 26 people around him to, as though they were weak, they were vulnerable, they were targeted for spying to try and create a narrative like Trump had colluded with the Russians. And by the way, just so people know, I'm getting to a key thing here in just a moment. Just so people know, though, you got to look at Georgia Tech. You got to look at the Durham report and understand what's going on here. What you're being told is when they targeted these 26 people that were considered to be vulnerable around Trump, that you could, create a narrative. What was really done at Georgia Tech was they used the computer technology and the mapping technology of who was where, who was close to whatever, where was the crossover, and they took all of that information to create a storyline. They literally took these clues and then created a story around it. I had a friend that would literally go out to ancient, locations, campsites. He's a cowboy. He'd ride his horse out. He'd go out in the desert somewhere out in the mountains where he knew that there'd been a settlement, a logging operation, a gold mining operation. And he would look for clues and take the pictures of them. A broken whiskey bottle, shell casings, some coins, some old leather in the building, the way a door hinge was mounted and worked. And then he'd take all those pieces that he was taking the pictures of and put them in his book. And then he would write the story of the cowboy or the gunslinger or whatever. And the whole story would lead up with those little bits and pieces to the end. And here's the site, a century later, and here's all the stuff that was left from that thing. And he'd write a whole story. He is making it up. He's using his imagination. The Georgia Tech stuff was about taking all of those people around Trump and then constructing a narrative that was believable to make a story that all those people colluded with the Russians on behalf of Trump, and therefore he's colluding with the Russians in this big storyline, this creating a script around Trump. But now let's jump back forward, and I apologize if I have to bounce around a little bit, but I'm trying to give you bits and pieces to understand this current moment. What's the crisis that is about to grip Washington, D.C.? What's the crisis that's already started with the St. Valentine's Day massacre of information targeting various crime families in the American political system, in the world political system, where their spy agencies, their intelligence agencies, their operatives were colluding to overturn the American election? British spies, French spies, Australian spies, Israeli spies, American spies, all working together, coordinated from the American side by CIA and from other countries, other intelligence agencies, MI5 and 6, Israeli intelligence. By the way, it patterns. While you had the Five Eyes involved, not everybody was an equal partner within the Five Eyes. The British, the Israelis, and the Americans were tighter inner groups, like the Apostles. You had Peter, James, and John. They were an inner circle within the 12. Okay, within the Five Eyes, the Brits, the Americans, and the Israelis were working even closer together. And that pattern is seen also over at Epstein Island. Remember, you had the American side represented by Bill Clinton, roping American businessmen, the people out of the university system, people out of the political system, people out of the court system, down to Epstein Island, where they could be set up and then blackmailed. You had people around Randy Andy there in England, in the line of succession to the throne. And he's roping people in, friends, relatives, family, whatever, gets them all down there. They get them locked in some type of a blackmail operation. I say the university system. Well, you had very powerful people within the technology and information systems that were, sucked in. Epstein himself was supposedly very interested in technology, wanted to run a genetics project, a breeding project in New Mexico with girls to create his own bloodline to own the future. And then you had the Israelis in there. So you had Ghislaine Maxwell. It was a Israeli, British, and American operation at Epstein Island to blackmail various business and political leaders, military, etc., to do their bidding around the sex stuff. In what happened with these 26 people around Trump, think of Stephen Halper over at Cambridge, and he's running these meetings between people in the intelligence community. So you had Flynn over there as a member of the intelligence community. You had a Russian gal over there, supposedly a spy out of Russia. And then he creates the narrative that Flynn was captured, had sex with this Russian spy, and they were communicating information. And Flynn has betrayed his wife. And so he's untrustworthy. Barack Obama goes out of his way when he had one meeting with Trump directly in the White House in the prelude to Trump coming in and taking office. He specifically warns Trump about having Flynn as his national security director. Flynn is a Democrat, but he campaigned for Trump during the 2016 election period. The setup to make Flynn look like he was involved with the Russians over the Russian agent at this soiree, this meeting that he was asked to come over and speak at over at Cambridge. That was all set up by Stephen Halper. Stephen Halper, out of the intelligence community, out of the military community, he's on a DoD contract for $500,000. He's an American citizen who also has a British passport. He was a member of the Reagan administration, working in association with Bush 1, the vice president, during Iran-Contra and all of that stuff in the prelude to that era. And then miraculously ends up over in Britain teaching at Cambridge. What's the connection to the intelligence community? Well, he's connected to the American intelligence community. He's connected to the British intelligence community. And by the way, where else is he connected? To the Israeli intelligence community. When Papadopoulos, this kid who's, peripherally involved in the Reagan or in the Trump campaign, and he has a little oil gas experience. He's trying to, come up through the ranks, make a name for himself. He's doing what young guys do. He's dodging and diving and wheeling and dealing. And he's trying to make a buck. And he's got a beautiful young wife out of Italy who somebody misunderstood she was out of Russia and claimed she was a Russian spy. Totally fallacious. But he has a little meeting with Stephen Halper. Halper has a student aide, becomes a contact for him, and turns out she's just a honeypot. And she tries to bed Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos is a man of faith, and he won't betray his wife. And his wife is a world beauty. This gal's a real looker, tits and ass. And tries to honeypot him. He doesn't go for it. But then the scam continues on, and they get him down to Israel. And suppose he's going to work on an oil gas deal, and they're working him. And hey, take some money. We'll need it for travel. You'll need it for expenses. We want you to come back. They give him 10 grand cash. He knows something's not right. He's smart enough for all the people who've besmirched him as though he was, somebody's fool. I'll tell you what, I have total respect for what Papadopoulos did and the way he conducted himself when he was being targeted by these people. If he hadn't had his principles, if he hadn't had the hand of God on his shoulder, they'd have got him. They'd have got him. But he had principles, and he had a vow with his wife, and he didn't take the bait. So then when they give him this money to send him home, he has his wits about him. He stops in Greece on the way home because that's where he'd come out of. He talks to an attorney. The attorney says, I agree. I think you're being set up. Let me put the money in the safe. They got something in mind. It might be marked. It might have something on it. We don't know what's going on. He doesn't really know. He put it in the safe. He flies home to the U.S. When he gets to the U.S., unlike all the other times he's traveled all over the planet, FBI calls him over. The Border Patrol people call him over. They put him in a room. They start searching his bag. They're searching his person. They're interviewing, asking him questions. What in the world are they looking for? He just gone to Israel. They're an ally. He's not, what's going on? They're looking for the $10,000. They're looking for $10,001. You have to declare anything over $10,000. He didn't declare it. They thought sure that he would bring that money home, and then he'd have a few hundred or thousands of dollars on him that most businessmen leave the country. You take 1,000 or two on you cash, just in case the cards don't work, something goes wonky, you got to do whatever. Are you going to trust that your plastic's going to work anywhere you go? So he doesn't come home with the $10,000 plus whatever he has in his pocket. They couldn't do the setup. They finally had to let him go. If he hadn't left the money with the attorney in Greece, they'd have got him. But here's the part you have to think about. You have MI5 and 6 with the Steele dossier coordinating with Halper, coordinating in this whole offshore operation out of London. Then you have the Israeli side of the operation. They were in collusion. Halper's coordinating with Mossad, with a Jewish component. And who are they coordinating? With the FBI. When he got to the States, FBI was who was waiting for him, not Mossad or British intelligence. The spy agencies were tag teaming him. This was an operation global in nature, designed to get a hold of a guy, blackmail him. Hey, you got more than $10,000 here. We can send you to jail for 10 years. You didn't declare it. But I'll tell you what, you're tied to this Trump thing. We think he's crooked. We think he's taking money from the Russians. We think you're tied into him too. We think your wife is a Russian spy. You work for us, we'll ignore this. We could come back with it later if you don't behave. But for the time being, we'll ignore it. You work for us, you give us the information. We'll even pay you. We'll pay you big money. And you can work for us. That's what they were going to do. But he didn't have the 10 grand. And by the way, it was FBI. Now they could pay him money. Where was the money going to come from? I'll skip for a second. We had Trennis Evans, a J6er. In the course of working, doing what he was doing, trying to fight on his case, living down in Texas, the FBI had taken all of his electronics when they went to his house. Everything, computers, phones, the whole schmear. He's a businessman. He has a few bucks. He's not broke, but it's not like he's Rockefeller or something, okay? Suddenly, after all this time out of the blue, the FBI says, we can come get your stuff. He'd been through his Washington case and all that, and they'd given him, probation for a period of time and like that. So Trennis goes to pick up his stuff. When he goes to this FBI office, a couple 100 miles away to pick his stuff up, oh, it's not quite ready yet. We got to wait for somebody that's got to sign something. Here, wait here, sit here in this room, whatever. And then one of the FBI agents involved comes over and he's talking to him. And then he says, "Hey, look, we know you're a good guy. You got caught up in this. You're not, Dillinger. But we know there's a bunch of bad guys in this J6 community, and they're not like you. And you got a good enough deal, but it's still grinding you in your life. Listen, here's what I can do for you. If you agree to work for us and provide us with information about the other J6ers to kind of monitor the community, and if they're planning something, if they're going to do a insurrection or try to start civil war, and you can give us information. Look, I'll tell you what, I can make all of this go away. I can stop the probation. I can get your record clear. We can go back to the judge and we'll work a deal. Okay. And by the way, I can even get you money. I can get you $30,000 a month if you just work for us. And that's cash. That doesn't go into, you don't have to pay taxes on it. You don't have to declare it. 30 grand a month cash in your hand to do work for us. Now, Trennis is no buckwheat. And I can guarantee you for a fact that happened. Now, why is that relevant? Because in the course of, I apologize for everybody's background, the kids are having a good time. Why is that relevant? Because that money, Trennis asked them, the FBI is going to give me that money. This is going to get reported. What if it gets out and the J6ers, other people in the community find out that I'm a traitor? My life won't be worth salt. Okay. I can't do that. Somebody at the FBI turns evidence and it goes to Congress or something. And he says, no. This is off the books. Nobody knows. I don't even the FBI isn't going to have a record. What? How are you going to pay me all that money and not even the FBI is going to have a record? Because it wasn't coming from the FBI. The FBI agent who's talking to Trennis is working for Senior Executive Service. And the money's coming from Senior Executive Service. It's not coming through the FBI's books. He even tells Trennis, don't worry, I'll show you how to set up your bank accounts, how to put the money where it's going to go, where nobody else is going to see it. You're not even going to have to pay taxes. Nobody's going to know about it. It's yours. And I'll teach you how to use it. We'll give you an advisor that'll teach you how to use it, and you'll be clean. Don't worry about a thing. Trennis listens to the whole story and then decides to bag out. Why? And then he files, just so that you know, he files paperwork in his case to the judge describing exactly what happened and in a way that cannot be refuted and has the proof. What's the FBI's response? They still haven't responded. That's months and months and months and months ago. So why is that important? It was the same kind of money that they would have offered Papadopoulos if they'd done a deal with him had he come home with $10,000. They didn't want to arrest him. When that money came from the Mossad agent into Papadopoulos's pocket, in collusion working with the FBI and MI5 and 6 and their operatives, they didn't want to take Papadopoulos into custody and take him out of the Trump camp. They wanted to work him and manage him and control him and pay him, make him happy. If they couldn't control him with the sex pot, they'd get him on the money. One way or another, they were going to get him. And all 26 of the people that were being targeted by intelligence agencies around the world They were being gamed to be set up in similar ways, to try and find the weak ones in the herd, to get agents, operatives, trolls inside the Trump campaign, and to get close to Trump to create the illusion of some type of graft, some type of foreign collusion, Russian collusion within the Trump camp. That's what was going on.
Wow. He was at the Vegas event, wasn't he? In October of 2021. Populous.
I had to mute the background for a second there. The reality is that Papadopoulos has been around. He's talked to all sorts of people. He's tried to put his information out there. He's done a beautiful job. He's at the core of something very important. He's kept his cool. He hasn't gone sideways. He stayed viable. He can go into anybody's bullshit camp. I have complete respect for him. He was in the crosshairs from multiple directions and stayed intact, kept his character intact. An amazing person. My hat's off to him. All of that, though, let me just finish the story here, and probably have to go here pretty shortly because I've got people that are waiting for me. The key is this. What was the communications mechanism that was used? You see, going back in history, all the way back to World War II, when the CIA was created, what was the relationship between the CIA and other government agencies? Well, at the time, you had two brothers, the Dulles brothers. Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. is named after one of the brothers. One brother became head of the State Department, was the Secretary of State, and one brother becomes the head of the CIA, running the CIA during the setup. And by the way, the CIA came from Office of Special Services, which was tied to MI5 and 6 in World War II. They needed a foreign intelligence service. Those agents all had relationships back to British intelligence, the training, the coordination, the stuff out of Canada, all of their various players. And then, by the way, as we brought in the people through paperclip and German intelligence, we sifted in some of those Nazis into the American and British intelligence systems because they had intelligence from their own people who went into Russia, a back door into the Soviet Union. So they became very important and sifted into the American and British intelligence community. What really happened beyond that, the overt and the covert were being combined by the two brothers, the Dulles brothers. As Kennedy came into his administration, one of the big complaints was that he kept being worked. What he was getting told by the State Department, what he was getting told by the CIA, very self-serving, while they're overthrowing governments. Iran, Chile, stuff across the world, even the intelligence concerning the Nazis in South America, the intelligence out of Mossad with a lot of the people there. There was all sorts of angles in play that keep coming back to the same little relationship between State Department and the intelligence agencies. Now, Kennedy was so pissed at a certain point with the lies that he was being told that he got rid of one of the Dulles brothers. Okay, kicked him out of the CIA for all the lies that were happening: Cuban Missile Crisis, Bay of Pigs, the setup to try and get him in a position where he might have ended up presiding over World War III. But that all of those lies just couldn't be stomached anymore. Did the relationship between the CIA and the State Department go away? No. Where did they put Hillary when she didn't get to go for the presidency in 2008 and they let Obama go forward? She took number 2 position, State Department. When she was coming back out to run against Trump and left that position at the State Department, who replaced her? John Kerry. On the day that the election happened in 2016, where was John Kerry? Antarctica. Where did Newt Gingrich go a couple weeks later and stay for 3 weeks after Trump was obvious winner and going to come into office? So went to Antarctica. Where did Brock go when we found out that Tucker's going to be interviewing Putin and he's going to bypass the Western media and get his message out to the West through Tucker and his operation? Obama, who supposedly is running Biden, takes off to Antarctica. Where did Obama go just prior to leaving office in his last foreign trip? Down to the tip of South America, where all the Nazis are, Antarctica. You see a pattern showing up here, the breakaway, that I won't go into all the details because it's too long of a story of the stuff that happened in South America in the 1800s, in the early 1900s. Over the last couple hundred years. That's another story for another day, a longer story. But at the end of the day, they're the breakaway. They intend to preside over the destruction of everything in the Northern Hemisphere, to take us back to a prehistoric era, if possible, and rebuild the world on the side that they can control. And they'll come back north of them in the Northern Hemisphere in 100, 200, 300 years and rebuild that. In the meantime, we're back to the Stone Age because we nuke each other to death. That's what Putin's trying to warn you. People that are running the world from behind the scenes, DC, the Mideast, China, they're trying to control you to get you into a world conflict. World War IV, we won World War III. Reagan presided over that. Bush got the winning end of it as the wall came down. But we're back. We're back on the verge of nuclear war in Central Europe. An economic war that's literally just about to start. Lot in play. Where was the information communicated? To overturn the Trump victory that was in play from the November 3rd election in the wee hours of the night on November 4th. The information was communicated through the State Department, through their secure systems, their secure lines back into America. It was foreign interference. It was in collusion with American intelligence operatives and NATO military and intelligence operatives to control the outcome of the election, to make sure that the player that met the requirements of this global cabal, this intelligence agency cabal, this breakaway civilization cabal, would get into power and begin the march back to create the circumstances for a global conflict, primarily north of the equator. And that's what we're fighting against. And that's what's going to come out. In this St. Valentine's Day massacre, you've seen the information coming out over the last many hours, showing the collusion within the intelligence agencies. When you see the articles talking about CIA, that is not fully accurate. It's collusion where it went out to other intelligence agencies, and players in those foreign governments, those foreign operations, were fully engaged and cooperating and being managed by CIA operatives as the information went out and came back in to control who got to be the next American president, the most powerful position in the world. And the way that that information came back in and the players involved were State Department players. That's why when Trump, when he came into office in 2017, one of the very first things he did day one was essentially close down all operations, froze them in place over at the State Department. Not one memo, not one communication, not one thing goes out without his personal approval within his tight reign. Why? Because they're all working for the other side, potentially under somebody's control. Not even a coded communication. People complained viciously that they weren't being allowed to do their job. Why? Because you couldn't trust what was going on over there. A very captured operation over at State Department. When we got things moving again a little bit during the Trump administration and up to the 2020 election, those players were still present. They had their secure communications system, and they used it to communicate the data back to America to steal an American election in cooperation with multiple intelligence agencies. That is foreign interference. It will not stand. The American people are going to find out about it, the details of that. The players who were involved in that, both in the intelligence agencies and in the State Department. That legacy of the Dulles brothers is about to be fully exposed. And then the world is going to have to look and see and understand that the person supposedly occupying control of the Western world and the White House and all that, we have two presidents, a legitimate one and a fraudulent one from a stolen election. And how do we reconcile this? How do we resolve this? The data will be clear. I'm throwing steak on the plate, okay? You're not going to take this down in just a few minutes. Got to cook it up. Got to slice it off. You got to chew it good. The coming weeks and months is where this will play out, not just in the American electorate, but across the world. And why is that? Because the whole world has been affected by this stolen election. It's not just traders inside the United States. It's traders across the world who have sold their soul to a cabal that wants to own the world via running the world through a world crisis, a war, other calamities that we know we can say the name of, but probably can't if we want to be on YouTube, etc. With the intent, the desire to reduce the population of the planet, a la the Georgia Guidestones. Which of course is interesting. Georgia keeps coming up. It's Georgia Tech stuff from the Durham report, etc. The Georgia Guidestones saying that 13 out of 14 people alive on planet Earth need to die, need to not procreate, so that you only have 500 million left. That's the carrying capacity of the Earth, in their opinion. It's false. It's a lie. It's bullshit. It's Moloch, Baal bullshit. But that is the lie. That cannot be allowed to stand. They can't be allowed to stand. We will not give ourselves over to them. We're coming back to take back ownership and control of the planet. And these people won't get away with it. That's why you're going to have tribunals in the Donbass with the Russians, tribunals at Gitmo and other places with the Americans. We will get to the bottom of it, and we will rein those people in and take control back of America, and then go out to the rest of the world and help them to get control of their countries where they're being run by this globalista. There you go, Tom. Hope that helps. Hope your people will take some time chewing that. That's halfway coherent for them.
It's interesting. Well, thank you. When you talked about the State Department, and you were talking previously about Antarctica being a secure place for communication, was there any connection between the State Department and the message being sent back with the votes, or was that just two other things?
No, the location where that was done is part of what will come out in the next few hours and days. And I don't want to take anybody's thunder away on that. I will say that there is a reason why, Melania is the Flagstaff for Trump. Trump has done secure communications in plain sight, also using the language of semaphore. And that was communicated to the people out across the world. When he was operating as the president, every time she came out and appeared in a dress, it was a coded message. And between those messages, you would have a gap or you would have a black flag in order to know that that was end of one message, beginning of another, to direct it to what it was going to go to. When on January 20th of 2021, President Trump didn't stick around for the inauguration of Biden. He never conceded the election, never legitimized it by saying, okay, you won, I lost. No, because it wasn't true. He didn't lose. He got on Air Force One. He was still president. When they left the White House, before they got on Air Force One, Melania was wearing a black dress. End of message. We're in mourning. It's so horrible. They get on Air Force One, fly down to Palm Beach. They get off at West Palm Beach at the airport there. And Melania is wearing a dress covered in orange cubes, same as my book. We've talked about this before. The dress is dark to light, covered in cubes that get larger and larger. And page 71 of my book tells the story. It came out before that. The dress mimics what's in my book. Every page of my book has an orange cube in it.
So
there you go. And if you look, every single page, that's the second edition, every single page has an orange cube by the page number. That's what's mimicked. That's the second edition, and that's the dress. The first edition has President Trump on the back. The recent publication, Match magazine out of France, and Melania is wearing a dress covered also in cubes. Okay. Oh, there you go. Yeah, there's somebody's signature there too. When Melania did that, that's a dress covered in cubes, but you're looking at it from a different direction. They're squares, but it's intentionally designed to show you that it's 3D. And you're seeing it now over time. You've moved your viewpoint to this side view of these cubes, and now you're seeing them as squares. That's an important communication. She still is the Flagstaff with messages in semaphore, which was Trump's way of saying things. And in the language of flags, it's all about 2020. It's still all about 2020. You think we're going on to the 2024 election, but it's not just the 2024 election at this point. It's 2020 still. You cannot go on to the next election with a stolen election and seal it into place. The bank robbers don't get to spend the money. Just because they got out of the bank, got in the getaway car, down the street and around the corner, doesn't mean they get to keep the money. They are still going to be captured. Justice is coming. A justice of the peace isn't judgment. A justice of the peace is the police officer that arrests you in the commission of a crime, puts you in the cuffs and drags you off down to jail, and then you're processed and brought to judgment. We're in the justice phase of the operation, and we're in the process of chasing down these people that stole control of the largest military in the world, that stole control of the financial and business machine that is the United States, to try to redirect its energies, not for the good of the world, not even for their own good, but to put us at war with each other in order to cause us to destroy each other. They believe in their occult way of looking at things that if we destroy each other, the bad karma is on us. They might just give us a nudge and a bump here and there to get us to do that. And then they just step into the vacuum. They don't have to fight anybody. We destroy each other and they're the strong man left standing. That's the breakaway society's mentality. That is their script. And they're not confined just to Antarctica, not just to the tip of South America. They're all over the world. They're completely embedded, but certain control nodes and communications and decisions are being made from there. And that's why you see the players coming and going. We cannot allow that to happen. We will not allow that to happen. That is the fight for control of the world and to take out these megalomaniacs. It's very much like a James Bond film. It's like Our Man Flint. If you remember the old movie thing, kind of a tongue-in-cheek extrapolation of James Bond, but it's actually probably closer to reality than Bond is at this point in time. Although Bond, if you look at the script on the last Bond, it matches what just happened to the world, only it was DNA targeted precisely. And that's some of the data that's coming out. In fact, one of my guys is releasing more stuff on that this weekend. Go look at what Scott Bennett's doing. Beautiful, great friend, great guy that was targeted. They almost had him locked up for life and we got him out. But the long and short of it is, these are the revelations that we're all going to have to chew over and understand. A lot of it, I'm giving you kind of the roadmap where it's going, some of the plays out of the playbook, and now we flesh it all out. And the players come out and talk about it with precision and bring their documents and explain things. It will all be revealed to the world. And these people that tried to take the world to nuclear war and beyond, to destroy mankind, 13 out of 14 dead. One way or another, they don't care. So they could own the future of the world in a very eugenics sense. We're going to track them down. We're going to cuff them. And we're going to take them to trial. And justice will be done. Judgment's coming. This is the year of justice, 2024. Enjoy the show. There you go, Tom.
Thanks, Juan. And just a quick one where we started with Antarctica, talked about the dome. Can anybody go down and see the dome? Because I haven't seen the dome. But is that, how do you get to
You're misunderstanding something, Tom. Hold on. The entire ice cap over Antarctica, okay? You're thinking that it's one big, huge dome you can go inside and fly across from one side to the other. It's an ice cap. It has little pockets all over it where you have thermals, heat coming up from subsurface. It's like going to Yellowstone National Park. Yeah. And you have Old Faithful there. And there's a hot spring geyser. Water is in a river flowing through that area, and it gets down to a spot where it falls down, where it hits molten magma. And there's a sea or a stream of molten magma. It's not just in one place, it's moving. And as that water hits it, it becomes superheated, and bang, it comes up, rushes all the way to the surface of the earth and spouts out. A few minutes go by, that water that turned to steam and came gushing out is gone. Some more of the water in that stream hits that stream bed, and it's like it's constantly burping. It's like the old coffee pots when you and I were kids, maybe me, not you, but it would have a percolator and it would percolate, okay? The water would heat up to a certain point, it'd percolate through the top and go down back through the coffee grounds and put the flavor of the coffee into the water. So it was constantly percolating. That's what was going on there at Old Faithful. You have hot springs all over Antarctica under the ice. It's 1.5 times the United States, 50% bigger than the continental US. It's all over the place. The crust of the earth is actually very thin relatively. It's like the thickness of an onion, even in Antarctica. And these hot springs are down there too. And underneath those hot springs, anywhere you have liquid water, it's above 32 degrees. And that water, that fresh water, is then got heat that's melting the ice above it. But the ice is 1, 2, 3 miles high. So it's melted a little dome-like shape inside of those cavernous areas.
Mm-hmm.
It's warmed it up, and you have a pocket there that if you can access that pocket, it's not one huge dome. It wasn't built by aliens. Get your head out of your fucking ass. It's not aliens from outer space.
My head's not in my ass.
The reptilians. No. I'm saying that to the audience members, not you, Tom. But there's a component here that wants to think they're from some faraway place. Well, at some level, in some ancient time, we may have some remnants of them out there in the humanoid population. But for this cult, that's the one that we're actually fighting, they look just like you or me. They just believe that their blood is from the blood of Cain, from the blood of Lucifer. And Lucifer, being cursed and made to crawl in the dust of the earth, is reptilian, a serpent. And so they laugh about being the reptilians. Okay? It's just a bloodline. They're humanoid, but they believe that they're elites because they worship Satan, Lucifer, the devil. They're a cult. They're a religious cult that's trying to take over the planet. And they hide among us. They're shapeshifters. Far less real shapeshifters, although there's a component of them that probably do have that. And it's based on a certain aspect of the tech. But not nearly as alien from outer space showing up in their spaceships as people want to imagine. It's a breakaway society. Their alien technology is just a little more advanced over ours because they just did a little breakaway. They've gained a few years on us here and there over time. Over the last couple 100 years, they're just a little bit further ahead of us. In some categories, if you say that we've been held back in learning some things and understanding them, and they've leapfrogged forward, maybe they're 50 years ahead. What would aircraft operations look like 50 years in advance from where we are right now? Spacecraft, management of power systems, etc. Just 50 years. What if it's just 20? If you took where we are in the industrial or military realms, and you just add 50 years to it, or you take 50 or 20 years to it, or take 20 years off, how competitive in battle could you be with an opponent that has a 20-year head start on you in aircraft design development or movement on or under the sea or weapons of any type? In this modern age, that's light years. And that's all you're really dealing with here. A breakaway that's been working in engineering in plain sight with their alliances, with their cabal meetings, with their operatives, right in plain sight, to engineer us, take all the good stuff, move it just out of sight, out of range, get us to take each other apart, and then they move in with their bloodlines. It's a eugenics operation. They want you to die. It's like the movie Independence Day, and the aliens talking to the president, and the president's like, "What do you want from us? What do you, how are we going to work this out? I mean, can't we just work together? What is it you want from us?" And the alien just says, "We just want you to die. You don't have anything we want. Just die." That's the mentality of the cult that we're dealing with. You don't have anything to offer them. They want their bloodlines. It's a Luciferian mentality. And you're trying to have a discussion with the devil. The devil doesn't want you alive. He only wants his hybrids, his Cainites, and everything they bring with them on the planet. It's to destroy Adam and all of his seed, and only the hybrids get to survive. There you go, Tom. I hope that helps people. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Juan. What's the size of this breakaway group in terms of population down in Antarctica then?
Now say that again. I'm not sure I understood the question.
So the breakaway down in Antarctica, what's the size of the population? Because the general public just think it's a few scientists living there, a few communities doing scientific research. But is the breakaway group a lot bigger? Is it is it 500,000, 50,000, a million? How big is it?
Let's just play a quick game, and then I've got to leave here pretty quickly. For the sake of mental exercise, the reported population of Antarctica year-round is about 1,000 researchers on the surface of the ice. The summertime population rises to about 5,000 at the various research stations, all up on the surface. On the surface of the ice, it's you get down to 80 below zero. It's dark during the wintertime, 24 hours a day. It's an extreme location, like going to, the moon, Mars, someplace like that. But these people aren't operating on the ice. If you're on the ice, it's right there just under your feet. The ice wall is a cap. It's the wall from above. Even if you wanted to attack with nuclear weapons, it's a mile deep of ice in the thin spots. And if you've gone into the rock below, and we have simple tunneling technology and cavern creating technology today, to get in there and deal with them, pretty hard to root it out, especially if you've got a little bit better technology. In 1942, in Northern Europe, the German government advertised for volunteers. They were looking for 42,000 women of Nordic, Scandinavian, Germanic bloodlines to go down and support the German army in Antarctica with their Antarctic presence. 42,000 is an important number. 42 is again, in these cults, certain numbers have certain ritual meaning. Those women were recruited and taken down to South America, and then disappeared. They weren't in Argentina, they weren't in Chile. They disappeared into the woodwork. Where'd they go? Exactly where they said they were going, to Antarctica. What was going on in Antarctica with 42,000 women? Of course, anybody that does breeding, you don't need one man, one woman. Just like with any kind of a farming operation, you can have far less and work within the farming operation. Apologize for the racket in the background. To do a breeding program and just bring a little bit extra blood into the bloodlines, etc. But the reported numbers were similar for the men that were there. So what was going on under the covers, under the ice, as I said in the movie The Call that Jen and I did 3 years ago? What was going on under the covers, under the ice? If you had 42,000 women and they were down there supporting those troops and they didn't come back, and they just had a normal birth rate, maybe they had an accelerated birth rate, with what we know now about the programs for growing babies outside the womb. And if somebody got a little bit ahead, there's been pretty broad speculation in the scientific community, the ability to grow babies outside the womb has been pretty good on the tech side since at least the 70s, and probably sooner in some quarters that weren't made public. You could have a very large population. You could have had other people brought in afterwards. Let's say that the number was just 100,000. Could you hide 100,000 people under the ice in Antarctica and nobody could find them? The president of Germany, who was president for a little over a month near the tail end of World War II, who then went to Nuremberg and was tried at Nuremberg, in his testimony at Nuremberg, said that the Nazis had succeeded in building a city under the ice at one of the river access points, and that it was quite sustainable with the technology at the time, with virtually no outside assistance. They could have used various technologies to create their electricity. They didn't have to have nukes or like that. They didn't have to have diesel and oil, just because of the temperature differential, and with heat pumps and all of the supplies they need. You don't have a bad weather day. You can run your greenhouses. You could do everything. And hey, you're only a short boat ride distant back to South America. In fact, you might not be able to travel on the surface in the wintertime, but if you're in a sub, it's simple. And of course, you might not have had the super subs that we have today, but if you're purpose building for certain things, you could. We've had the reports for a very long time of high speed under the surface vessels, and the spottings where, our own military people have had numerous reports as though they're UFOs moving at high speed under the water. The reality with tunneling technology for certain types of vessels under the water, we know that we can create certain types of sonic membranes that allow them to go through the water at very high speeds. And so who knows what might have been developed, et cetera, down there. You don't have to have alien technology from outer space, that you dug up from under Egypt or India or under Antarctica to pull it off. Okay, it just has to be purpose built with the technology we have right now, let alone even better stuff that was purpose built precisely for that location, for exactly those things, even going back well before World War I. So if you understand what was going on, what the mentality was, what the direction that things were going, and I'll talk about that more in the future, that you could have a significant population down there is not that unimaginable. And if you look at the information that we have with some of the pretty good stuff, especially now, it's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but going back to the 70s, and you do the mapping out on potential populations, it's actually quite large. Would they want a super huge population? They probably manage it. Is it over 1,000? Is it over 100,000? Is it over 1 million? How hard would it be to hide 1 million people under the ice? Actually, not as hard as you might think. And if it's under the ice, is it just under the ice? Or is it down into the rock below? We build underground facilities all over the world. We have numerous huge underground facilities all over the world. And we've been doing that for a very long time. And so have others. And the technology to create that, to do that, has become extremely advanced. So that somebody with that as their precise purpose could do something like that, that's a little different. But there's nothing to see here. All the researchers going down, they never see anything. You could be standing right on top of it. You got to go a mile under the ice to the top of the dome. You might have to go 2 miles under the ice to get to the bedrock because it's built into the bedrock below. You might have to go 3 miles in places. And you have mountain ranges that are vast. Go to Area 51. They've created the illusion that the whole side of a mountain is real. And yet it's a great big huge door that can roll away on huge rollers. The side of the mountain moves out of the way. You get inside and you get in an elevator that's the size of the deck of an aircraft carrier. And it descends into the ground, not 50 feet, not 100 feet, hundreds of feet. And that technology has been around for a long time. It's been being built out the entire time. In Germany, as the wonder weapons were coming into play, if Germany had had 3 months, if they'd succeeded in opening up a new front at the Battle of the Bulge, if Patton himself and his army had not been there, available, you might be speaking German right now. 3 months and the wonder weapons would have come on deck. But those wonder weapons may very well have gotten a respite, not just in South America, but all the way to the ice cap. People need to stretch their mind, look at the movements of these people, look at what's going on. Nothing to see here, can't possibly be true, no possible way. Where did Catherine Austin fits? She talks about the secret space program. It's a hat trick. It's an illusion. It's a shell game. It's secret bases in space and on other planets, and all the money went to spaceships. No, it didn't. You're right. The day before 9/11, hey, we're missing, $5-6 trillion. We don't know where it went to. We know it's around here somewhere. We're sure we're going to find it, but that's what we're looking for. And yes, we're doing a big investigation, and all the records are over here at the Pentagon. We're working on it. Oh, miraculously, the missile from 9/11 that hits the Pentagon, the plane, excuse me, that hits the Pentagon. Where's it hit? Exactly on the portion of the building where all those records are being kept. Come on, man. It's a charades. It's a game. You're being played with. Plain sight. And the intelligence agencies are literally just the operative arm of something much bigger. It's not run by the American government. It's not run by the British government. It's not run by the Chinese government. Yeah, China's involved too, because it's a shell game. You're being maneuvered and manipulated so the populations will go to war with each other. When gangs fight each other, their best move is when they can convince the police to do their dirty work for them and cause one gang to fight the other, or the police to take out one gang over the other. It's the best thing. We're being manipulated to take each other out, and these guys just step in the vacuum, and they don't even have any bad karma from it because they actually believe in karma. They believe if they give us a nudge or a bump and we do it to ourselves, the bad karma's on us. God can't judge them because they didn't do it. God's people did it to each other. Why is it going to be a religious war at World War IV? By the way, we won World War III. The Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. We won the Cold War. This is World War IV. Foundation for the rest of history. That's the way they view it. And they view it as World War IV too, by the way. So where's World War IV going to be fought? What's it going to be fought about? Religion. It's a religious war. We're being conned into fighting each other in a religious war starting in the Mideast to destroy everything Northern Hemisphere. And the devil and his crew turn the world upside down and come in. They're king of the North, but the North is the South, and it gets flipped over. It's the way they think. Reversals, mirrors, as above, so below, as below, so above. That's what they're doing to you. They're playing with your mind. And you got to get your head out of your ass, understand it. We as a people have to come together, see that they frauded us, put people in power through frauds, and overcome that. And that's exactly what we're going to do. That's what this next many months is about. And the ways that they did it, their little control stuff goes back to the Dulles brothers, The imprint is there. The relationship between the State Department and the CIA and other government entities, and SES here in the United States, Senior Executive Service, and Serco in Europe, in Britain, and other similar groups that are controlling these governments with their shadow government hands that cannot be left and allowed to stand. We are going to get them. We're going to root them out. We are going to take control of the planet back. That's what's happening. I got a race. I hope that helps, Tom. I appreciate all of your listeners. I hope they enjoyed that.
Thanks, Juan. Good journey. Looks like you're having a great time.
All right.
Speak
Thanks,
again.
folks.
Take
All
care.
right. All right.
All right. Bye.